this is a glass Rodney decanter, which dates from around about 1900 into the early 20th century. So what exactly is a Rodney decanter? Well, they're also known as ship's decanters, and they were named after Admiral Rodney, who made his name at the end of the 18th century. Um, he won the Battle of Cape St. Vincent, and apparently after the Moonlight Battle celebrated by drinking from a Rodney decanter. A couple of years later, in 1782, he did a good job of decimating the French Navy, taking 34 ships at the Battle of Saints off Dominica. So before Nelson came to the fore, really in the naval world, Rodney was a big name and he was very popular with the public. So the ship's decanter adopted his name and they've been known as Rodneys ever since. Well, why is it suitable for use on board ship? Well, it's fairly obvious really, isn't it? This low centre of gravity and this conical shape means it's going to be much harder for it to tip over. If we look at this domestic decanter from around about 1900, we can see it doesn't have that low centre of gravity. It's going to tip easier in rough seas, whereas this one is not. You're not going to lose the precious contents. This early 19th century candlestick, made in brass, we can see is clearly influenced by the shape of the Rodney decanter, and this would have been made for use on board ship. This conical shape below is also filled with what's probably casting sand to give it some weight. So again, it won't tip over, cause a fire in high seas, and was very, very practical for use on a ship. And today, of course, Rodney decanters are still made. I'd be surprised if many of them are used on board ships still, but they certainly have become very fashionable as a shape for a decanter, as an object, and they've come into domestic life. Many Rodney decanters are used in the home because they've got such a pleasing shape. But they were used on board ship. Admiral Rodney apparently had one, and in 1801 it's recorded that Nelson ordered port, sherry, and half a dozen Rodney decanters, probably filled with claret. So they're very useful. And up until about 1780, it was important to decant your wine. It was shipped unfiltered. Quite often it had a bit of sediment in the bottom, and you wouldn't want any of that pouring into your glass. So you would filter it and pour it into a decanter for use. Of course, as the process of shipping wine improved throughout the years, you didn't need to decant it for those reasons. But there's a certain ceremony and nice feeling from decanting a bottle of wine. Of course, with red wine, if you decant it, you're going to get it up to room temperature much quicker by helping to get the air in it. But, you know, drinking out of wine from a decanter just feels a little bit more special, a little bit more enjoyable. Lord Cardigan, apparently in 1840, some stories have it that he put one of his officers on charge, a chap called Reynolds, because he didn't decant wine from the bottle. He poured it straight from the bottle rather than decanting it into a decanter. It was known as the Black Bottle Affair. Of course, what really happened was that it wasn't that he didn't decant the bottle of wine. It's that Cardigan had banned the drinking of porter amongst his officers. Porter, like Guinness, a black beer, was frowned upon by Cardigan. And Reynolds had ordered a bottle of Moselle, which came in a black bottle. And Cardigan, famous for leading the charge of the Light Brigade, of course, mistook it for a bottle of porter, put him on charges. The charges still stood, even though Reynolds contested it. So this is a cut glass Rodney decanter. It's got these nice 3 rings at the top, which actually form a good grip, make it easier for pouring. The stopper on it's been replaced, but it's a period stopper, and it works well. It's correct for the look, and it's going to be around about 1900, early 20th century in date.